Okay, folks, the summer growing season has ended, right? And winterizing is just around the corner. So make the most of fall with help from a master arborist. Not a lot of those guys around. John Palmer's here. And I tell you, just walking past a tree with this guy, you could stop for a second and talk about half an hour about one little tiny thing.
I can bore anyone to tears. I have a gift.
Well, you don't bore him because he does tours, all kinds of great stuff. And we're talking about fall, this time of season, and you got your yard, maybe there's some planning you should be taking.
Well, yeah, and in fact, what people don't realize is that fall is actually the best time of year to plant. Again, the temperatures are cooler. We're getting a more like the rains we're getting today, that soft, long-standing rain or whatever. The temperatures are cooler, and the ground is still not frozen. So you basically have months yet for the roots to grow. When you plant in the spring, oftentimes you go from nice warm weather to suddenly hot and no rain for 3 weeks. And so it actually can be more stressful on plants and trees. But a lot of times what people have to, I think, people miss out on is that they overplant. You got to remember, plants are kind of like puppies and kids. They all get bigger. Okay, so when you plant, if you put it in landscape design, it should look a little bare when you install it because you're trying to make room for that. And a lot of people, when they do designs or do their own designs, even the professional designers actually overplant like that.
I was lucky. I had a plan made for my yard 30 years ago, and I took the plan to the garden center, and the guy says, "You got too much stuff." I went, "What? You got too much stuff?"
People
exactly
are like,
what you're saying.
We're like, yeah, my yard looks like a jungle. I'm like, well, you got to think about that. So if you do it right, and that's the big challenge. Oftentimes, people don't realize that plants and trees in particular, but plants and trees have a genetic blueprint. They are going to grow according to that, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So again, things like pruning, and I think we've got some pictures here. But looking at that, if you actually prune, wherever you cut in nature, you stimulate growth below the cut. So you see all that big, it's like a shrub on a stick.
Right.
Well, if you that's what happens when you shear, is you would stimulate growth below the cuts. You get 3, 4, 5 branches growing, and now you've got this big thing that you have to do even more work next year to prune. So just things like that, if you can think about that, about planning that. And the other thing I tell people is, like, when they design landscapes, everybody wants to have like a row of 6 boxwoods or whatever, this, that, whatever. That's fine if you're going to do a hedge, but if you've ever tried to shear shrubs and get them all to look the same, they don't. So the top picture, it looks like a roller coaster, but that's a bunch of individual shrubs that weren't pruned very well. The ones below, I did those, so I can toot my own horn a little bit here. But it's very difficult to actually be able to get them so they all look the same. So that's actually the challenge. Now, the plants and trees, they don't care. They don't have eyes. They don't care what they look like, but we care what they look like. So sometimes that can be it can be troubling for people, and it's a lot more work to try to keep them looking good.
How about around the base of trees and shrubs right now? Is there anything you should do there, like mulch, not mulch?
You can do
how high the dirt should be.
Yeah, just basically wherever you see in nature, wherever you see the root flare. We talked about this, I think, last year about the root flare. That should always be above grade, and it should not be covered by mulch. And that's one of the problems when you actually go to the garden center, is a lot of times that root flare, what's called the flare, is actually buried. And then when you plant it in the ground, it's even deeper. So again, this is what I do with containerized trees, is I actually take a hose and kind of try to wash off the top couple of inches so I can find that root flare, so I can make sure I'm planting it properly.
I'm sure people are worried about disturbing all those roots, but disturbing them might be a good idea then.
It actually is, because if they've been in a container, especially if they've been in the container too long, yes, you want to loosen those up and break them up and tear them. I use pruners and knives and my boot and anything.
Box cutters.
Yes, exactly. It's called scarifying, actually. It's a technical term. But there's a way to plant things, and there are national standards to plant them. For anybody that's interested, the ANSI A300 standards, which was in that picture, the booklet there. If you want to know how to plant a shrub or plant a tree, there is an actual way to do that. And if you don't do that, you're at risk of that by actually causing the trees to go into stress and making it more difficult for them to establish. So if whoever's planting your stuff, if they don't plant according to those standards, you're putting your trees and shrubs at greater risk.
Okay, 15 seconds here.
Yes.
We got summer flowers. They're done. People want to put some color back in their yard right now. What's the best way to do it?
And everybody plants mums because mums they're a cool weather thing. So you just have to find out which plants are cool weather plants. The thing about a lot of those plants and things in containers like mums, I shake off a bunch of that material because that material doesn't hold moisture. It just gets wet, and there's a difference. So that's why they dry out really quickly in your pots, even when you plant them in the yard.
So you should book a tour with this guy, because you go out with him in your yard, in the park, anywhere. You learn so much so fast. This guy's a wealth of knowledge.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
I'm just trying to help.
It's always great to see you.
Thanks
always
very
great
much.
to
Thanks
have
to
you.
be back.